On the 9th of March, 4 doctors and a brother signed a form saying the man in bed 6 was gone. On the 11th of March at 4:10 in the morning, his hand closed around a maid's wrist. Paperwork is not the same as truth. Her name was Zuri. She was the maid. She was 35. 2 years and 8 months in the Takada house. Everybody knew what she was. Nobody knew what she had been. The man in bed 6 was Isamu Takada, 52. A crash on the expressway on the 7th. That was all it took. By the 9th, his brother had a form, 4 signatures, and a plan for the 20th, and one woman stood in a hospital corridor and would not go home. Stay with me tonight. You will hear what she saw on a screen that 4 trained people walked past, and you will hear the 4 words that ended a doctor's career. Before we get into it, tap subscribe. It is free, and it helps this channel more than you know. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I read every one. Now let me take you back 2 years. Isamu Takada ran a house in Osaka that other men were careful around. He had run it for 9 years. He had no wife and no children and one younger brother. Remember the brother. Everything that goes wrong in this story goes through him. Zuri Mensah trained in Accra. 7 years in intensive care. Head injuries, mostly. Nights, mostly. The kind of ward where you learn to read a room by the sound of the machines in it. She came to Japan for a man who did not stay, and her license did not follow her. The registration board wanted examinations she could not pay for while she was eating, so she cleaned a big house above the water instead. She was good at that too. She was good at most things she decided to do. And in 2 years and 8 months she never told a single person in that house what she used to be. Not once. Not to be humble, because she had learned that a woman who says she used to be somebody is heard as a woman who is nobody now. You might be wondering why she never said anything. I want you to imagine it, honestly. You are the maid. Your papers depend on the job. The people around you have been trained since childhood to hear a certain accent and stop listening at the 3rd word. You do not announce yourself in a house like that. You wait, and you watch, and you keep your qualifications folded in a drawer under your winter clothes. That drawer matters later. But she noticed things. She could not help it. She noticed when the old gardener's ankles swelled and told him to see somebody, and he went, and it was his heart. She noticed when the family doctor wrote up a dose for the elderly aunt that did not match the woman's kidney numbers. She mentioned it. Politely, once now here's the specific thing. The thing I want you to hold. That doctor was named Shimizu. He had been the Takada family physician for 11 years. He was standing in the main hallway with 6 people when she raised it. He did not check the chart. He did not ask her a question. He looked at the mop bucket by her foot and he said 4 words. He said, "You clean floors, madam." 6 people heard it. 2 of them laughed. Remember those 4 words. They come back at the end of this, and when they do, a room full of people has to sit very still. She said, "Yes, sir." She finished the hallway. She never raised it again. The aunt was hospitalized 9 days later with exactly the problem Zuri had named. Nobody connected the 2 things. Nobody ever does. So that was her position in that house. Invisible, competent, and quiet. Except for one person. Isamu Takada was not a warm man in public. In his own kitchen, he was somebody else. He came home late. He ate standing up, and at some point in the first year he had started saying good evening to her by name, which nobody else in that house did. Once he asked what she was reading. It was a nursing text she had bought second-hand. He looked at it for a moment and handed it back. He said nothing at all. 2 weeks later, the household paid for her mother's cataract surgery in Accra. The housekeeper was told it came out of a staff fund. There was no staff fund. He never mentioned it. She never thanked him, because thanking him would have exposed that she knew. That is the entire romance in this story, and it lasted 2 years, and neither of them ever said one word about it out loud. Then came the 7th of March. Rain on the expressway. A truck. Nobody was at fault, and it did not matter. Isamu Takada arrived at the hospital with a serious head injury and no other injuries worth mentioning. They did what a good unit does. They cooled him deliberately. They sedated him deeply. They put him on the ventilator and they waited. That is standard. That is correct. Hold on to it, because it is the whole story. Zuri went to the hospital on the 8th and stood in the corridor for 11 hours. Nobody asked her to be there. She was not family. She was staff. The brother arrived on the 8th as well. Goro Takeda was 46. Handsome in the way that is mostly tailoring. He had spent 11 years waiting for something and telling everybody he was not waiting. He had a contract meeting on the 20th that he could not attend as anybody's younger brother. On the 9th, at 9 in the morning, Dr. Shimizu came to the unit as the family physician and requested a determination. By 2 that afternoon, there was a form. 4 signatures. The brothers, as next of kin. And a plan to withdraw support on Thursday morning. Now, I want to be careful here, because this part matters. Done properly, that determination is one of the most careful things in all of medicine. There is a protocol. There are confounders you must rule out. It takes time on purpose. This one was not done properly. Zuri got into that room on the 9th by carrying a laundry cart, which nobody in a hospital ever stops. She stood at the end of bed 6 and she looked at the monitors for 4 minutes. Then she started crying, and she could not stop, and a nurse walked her out. But she had already seen it. The ventilator was set to 14 breaths a minute. The screen was showing 18. He was breathing over the machine. 4 extra breaths a minute, all his own. A man who has been declared gone does not do that. He cannot. It is the one thing that cannot be faked or hoped for. She went back at midnight with the laundry cart and read the chart properly. His core temperature was 33.4. Still cool, not warmed and rechecked. The sedative infusion was still running. Still running at that dose while somebody wrote up an examination. There was 1 examination on file, not 2, and no apnea test at all. Every one of those is a confounder. Any one of them makes a determination meaningless. All 3 together make it a piece of paper with names on it, and nothing else. Zuri Mensah stood in that room at midnight and understood exactly what she was looking at. The question was, who on earth was going to listen to the maid? She tried the night resident first. He was 29 and tired, and he listened for 90 seconds, which was more than anyone else gave her. He said he could not challenge 4 signatures. He said it politely. He looked at the floor while he said it. There is always a man with rank who suddenly has to be somewhere. She tried the ward sister. She tried the administrator's office on the 10th and sat there for 3 hours and was never seen. Security escorted her out of the unit twice on the 10th of March. She came back both times. Understand what those 2 days actually were. She did not eat properly. She used the toilet on the 3rd floor because the unit staff had started watching her. She slept 90 minutes in a plastic chair. A cleaner in her own hospital clothes, sitting outside an intensive care unit, arguing with people whose signatures were already on the form. You would have gone home. Most people would have gone home. That is not a criticism. That is just true. And on the second time she sat down in the corridor outside bed 6, on the floor, against the wall, and she said she was not leaving until somebody warmed him up and looked again. Taigga was the one who found her there. Taigga had been Takeda's second for 9 years. A wide, quiet man who had never said more than good morning to her. He stood over her for a while. Then he sat down on the floor next to her in a suit that cost more than her year, and he asked her to explain it to him slowly. She explained it slowly. At the end of it he said one thing. He said, "You were a nurse." She said, "I was a nurse." Taigga made 2 phone calls. The first got a consultant from another hospital in Kyoto onto a train at 6 in the morning. The second one was to somebody about the brother, and I do not know what was said on it, and neither does anybody else. The withdrawal was scheduled for Thursday at 11. At 4:10 on Thursday morning, before any of it, Zuri was allowed into the room for 10 minutes. She was warming his hands. That is all she was doing. Both of them held between hers, gently, one at a time. 33.4 is cold. Nobody else in that building had done a single thing about it in 2 days. She was telling him about the shipping news. He used to read it out loud in the kitchen, badly, in English, because he had once made her laugh doing it, and had quietly kept doing it for 2 years. So she read it to him. Port names, tonnage, weather in the Sea of Japan. The most boring page in the newspaper, in a cold room, at 4 in the morning. She was crying while she did it. She would tell you that herself. She cried through most of that week. And his hand closed around her wrist. Not a twitch, not a reflex. It closed, and it held, and it did not let go for 11 seconds. She did not scream. 7 years of nights teaches you what to do with your hands and your voice. She hit the call button. She said one sentence to the resident when he came, and it was the right sentence. She said, "Purposeful movement, right hand, 410, and he is over-breathing the vent by 4. Then she said, "Document it now, sir, before anyone else comes." He documented it. The consultant from Kyoto arrived at 7. He read the chart in the corridor and went a color the resident described later as gray. He stopped everything. The sedative came off. The warming started. Nobody withdrew anything on Thursday. Isamu Takada opened his eyes on the 16th of March. He could not speak for another 2 weeks. He could not walk for 4 months. But he could hear from the 16th. And the first thing his second told him was who had been on the floor of that corridor. The review was held on the 8th of May. Not a courtroom, something worse for the people in it. A hospital review board, 9 members, in a room with a long table, with the family present, because the family had demanded to be present. Dr. Shimizu was there with a lawyer. Goro Takada was there with 2. The record was already in front of them. Core temperature at the time of the examination. The infusion rate. 1 examination. No apnea test. And a contract signed on the 12th of March by Goro Takada as acting head of the family holdings. 3 days after the form. 8 days before his brother opened his eyes. Zuri Mensah was called to give an account. She had been asked to wait outside for 2 hours first. She came in her own clothes, holding a folder. It was the one from the drawer under her winter clothes, her registration from Accra, her transcripts. 7 years of night shifts in a plastic wallet carried around the world and never once shown to anybody in that country. She set it on the table. Nobody had asked her for it. She had brought it anyway. Then she stood at the end of that table. And she talked for 6 minutes without a note in her hand in her second language, in front of 9 consultants. Protocol, confounders, temperature thresholds. sedative clearance times, spontaneous respiratory effort above the set rate, and what that means and what it cannot mean. When she finished, the chair of the board asked her where she had trained. She said, Accra, 7 years, intensive care. He asked why nobody at the hospital had known that. 9 consultants waited for the answer. And Zuri said, Nobody asked me, sir. 9 people wrote that down. Then the door at the back opened, and Isamu Takada came in. Wheelchair, 2 months of weight gone, Taigga pushing him. He had not been called. He had come anyway, and nobody in that room was going to be the person who asked him to leave. He looked at Shimizu for a long moment. Then he said, Say again what you told her in my hallway. About the floors. Shimizu said nothing. Takada said it again, and Dr. Shimizu, in front of 9 consultants and 2 lawyers and a hospital board, said the 4 words out loud. He said, You clean floors, madam. The room made no sound at all. Then Takada said, She does. She also read a chart that 4 doctors signed, and she was right and all 4 of you were wrong. He turned to the board and said one more sentence. He said, Her name is Zuri Mensah. Put it in the record correctly. Shimizu lost his registration in November. The determination was formally voided and the case is taught now, without names, to trainees. Goro Takada was not touched. Not one hand. His contract was unwound. His signature is worth nothing in that city, and he lives quietly in Nagoya, which in that family is the same as being erased. And Zuri. The hospital offered her a support role in the unit. She turned it down. Isamu Takada paid for the examinations. All of them. And the year of study. And he did it as a loan, with paperwork, because he understood exactly what she would and would not accept. She registered as a nurse in that country 19 months later. She works nights in a neurological unit in Osaka. She still goes to that house on Sundays. She does not clean it anymore. He asked her once why she stayed on that floor for 2 days when everybody with a title had told her to go home. She said, Because you learned my name when nobody else did. Here is what this story is really about. Nobody in that hospital lacked training. Every one of them had more paper on the wall than she did. What they lacked was attention. Attention is not a qualification. It is a decision you make about whether a person in front of you is worth looking at properly. A man is not gone because a form says so. And a woman is not simple because she is holding a mop. Somebody in your building has a folder in a drawer. A qualification, a trade, a language, a whole first life nobody at work has ever asked about. Ask. It costs you nothing. It cost that hospital everything. If you made it this far, tell me one thing in the comments. What was the moment you stopped scrolling? The 4 extra breaths? The corridor floor? Or the hand? And if you know somebody whose training in history nobody at their job has ever bothered to ask about, send this to them tonight. They need to hear how this one ends.